Yeah, effective work from home. Some tips and tricks. So most of this is based on my personal experiences and on what I've read about working remotely. So the plan of this presentation is that I would like to talk about a couple of things. First, preparing for remote work. So before you start working from home, what are the good things to think about, good things to do? Then how to make it effective to do the everyday work from home. And then the final part is the common issues and how to deal with them. This is something that I either experienced personally or I've read about. And yeah, I would like to share that with you as well. And then what I think it will be the most important part of this brown bag is Q&A session. If you have any questions, please wait until Q&A, and then we'll try to do the Q&A session remotely. Okay, so before you start working from home, how to prepare? So the most important thing, I think, is your mindset. For most of you, the work from home is going to only be temporary, so it will pass, right? Don't worry about it too much. Just accept it, embrace it, and that's it. I think one of the key parts of preparing for working from home is talking to your family, to others at your household, and explaining the situation to them that you need to work from home for some time. And while you are physically at home, you're working. So you're not at home. It might be rather blunt to say it that way. So you need to be diplomatic about that, but it needs to be clearly stated. It helps a lot if you clear the expectations in the beginning. That's my personal experience. So that's one thing. The other thing is that it's really good to read about remote work, and thanks to one of our colleagues, I've learned about at least one book that is going to be refunded. So it's a book by authors of Basecamp Software about remote work. I haven't read it. I will read it soon. So yeah, that's worth looking into. Then there is remoteonly.org. That's a page that was set up by GitLab, which is a fully remote company, where they present their views on remote work and how they deal with that. And I think it's really worth reading. There are really good recommendations to be found there. Okay, the other thing, to prepare yourself mentally, think about the good sides of working from home. For example, for me, when I started working from home, I immediately recognized the fact that I do not need to spend about 3 hours a day commuting to the office and coming back from the office. So that's hell lot of time. In your case, it might be different, but try to think of positive ways, of positive aspects of the situation that you're working from home. It really helps to have this positive attitude about it. Okay. Then some practicalities. If you don't have a comfortable chair, I recommend you get one, because this is really this is something that you're gonna feel at the end of the day. If you're working in the office, you already have a good chair. If you don't have one at home, this is something that is really worth looking into. Then, if possible, find a spot at your flat, at your apartment, or in your house, where you are going to do only work-related stuff. I'm gonna get back to it, but the important thing here is that you want to have a clear separation between work and non-work related stuff. And it really helps a lot if you can get a room, but if not a room, at least a part of the desk or something like that, just a space that is work only related. Then remember that you can take a second display from the office. You can do it today or tomorrow. It was explained in the mandatory work from home rules, and I think it's very important to remember about it, because working on a laptop with one single display, that might be really hard, especially if you're a developer. but maybe not only. But I know that for a developer, having a second display is really important. So don't forget about it. Then you're gonna need a decent headset for calls, because that's how you're going to communicate with the rest of the people. So again, get a decent headset. It doesn't have to be really fancy. I wouldn't recommend Bluetooth headsets because they're more pain in the they're more painful than useful.
In the neck.
Yeah, well, having a good wired headset like the one we have, the Plantronics headset, that is, I don't know if there is any available from the Office team right now, but this is something that really works well. So yeah, get a decent headset, you're gonna need it. Then make sure that you have a decent internet connection at home, and if you don't, get a 4G or something like that, because this is the other thing that you're gonna read really bad. And well, I have the luxury of having fiber to the home, and I must admit this is something that really makes working remotely a very pleasant experience, especially for calls. Yeah. Then make sure that your VPN connection works and you know how to set it up. VPN, at least for people who work with Atlassian, I think that's not a big deal because pretty much everyone has it. But if you need to be able to connect to the office premises, make sure that VPN for Spartez works for you as well. So these are the preparation things that I could come up with. Maybe you can come up with something more, then please let me know. Those I think are the crucial things, that just the baseline. That's something that you really need to think of before you start working from home. Then let's talk about everyday working from home, how to do that, how to work from home. So this is a bit of a joke, start early. I mean, I try to start as early as possible, and the reason for that is that you won't get disturbed when you start early, because most of people will sleep, or will at least think that it's impolite to try to do any business with you at, I don't know, before 8 a.m. or something like that. The other thing is that since you're not being disturbed, you can focus on your work, and this is really helpful. Me myself, I don't get up that early, 4:30. But anyway, I have found that getting early is really helpful. So this is the number 1 thing that I would recommend for everyday work. Embrace asynchronous communication, which means that Slack, email, whatever, if something can wait for your answer, use that. But on the other hand, if a quick call is possible, then by all means, do it instead of using email or Slack. If you see that someone is available, they answer your Slack messages, propose a call. Believe me, this will make things a lot faster, and it will help you to understand the other side really quickly, because that's the thing about communication. We only communicate verbally in something like 25%, and the other part of the communication is nonverbal. So if you can use a call instead of text, please do it. This will help you a lot. Then one thing that we found in Highlander's team is that the longer daily is actually better. So it's okay to make it at least something like 30 minutes, not more, but 30 minutes seems fine, just to make things clear, to explain some things that are going on that happened when you weren't in the office, and so on and so forth. So yeah, one thing about office hours, yes, they do apply to work from home. So the core hours are 10 to 3:30 p.m. And then I think it's okay-ish to have some small break during lunch hours, because that's what people at the office do as well. And you need to have your lunch at some point, right? So that's okay. Then about availability. It's clear that when you work from home, you might not always be available because of some family situation or things like that, or you just need to make sure that someone doesn't bother you at some point. Be clear about your availability. So one thing that you can do is you can set your status on Slack when you're away. then communicate to the rest of the team that there is something that you need to do and you won't be available in, I don't know, 15 minutes, half an hour. That's fine. If you're clear about it, I think it's fine. Then one thing that is worth remembering is assuming positive intentions on the other side, especially when communicating via Slack or email, when using text-only communication. It just makes easier for everyone. Okay. It connects to positive intentions, be understanding about others' availability, because since this is a new situation for many of us, it might be really hard in the beginning to explain to kids, for example, that daddy or mommy is working right now and they won't be able to play with you even though they stay at home. So it's okay, I think, to be understanding about others' people availability, that they need to jump off for a while and explain some things to kids, for example. The other thing that I think is really important is that if someone on the call is remote, which is like right now, exactly the way it is right now, then it's really important that everyone is remote. That's something that I have found in Trello, a guide for remote work. They experimented with that. So basically, even though they might have some collocated team that, let's say, a couple of members of the team are working from the office, and then some other are working remotely. If someone on the call is remote and joins from their desk, everyone is remote. So you don't go to the VC room, you don't use VC, because this makes a different experience for people involved. And I've experienced it myself when I started working remotely. The team that I was working was in Finland. I was working from Poland. And initially, they were using VC gear for all the calls that we had. And it ended up me disconnecting from the team at some point because they were doing some discussion internally and I couldn't hear everything. So when we recognized the situation, they immediately agreed to join from their desks and not use the VC gear. I think that's like the most crucial part about working remotely and communication when working remotely. Okay. The other thing is that it's really good to write things down, and it connects with asynchronous communication. We've got hello, we've got bulldog. So let's use it to write things down that anything, pretty much anything that that is a decision, a discussion. Let's keep it written down so that you can revisit it. You can avoid things like bootcamping some new developer. If it's written down, then you can read it, right? Yeah, that's more of a humorous note, but when you're in the office, the coffee is there, the tea is there. And this is something that is worth remembering. Understand how to obtain decent coffee or whatever you want to drink when working. And make sure that you have a decent stock of it. The other thing, and that's something, again, of a personal experience. In the beginning, your productivity might drop and you shouldn't be worried about it. Why? Because you're adapting to a new situation. You're working there are new conditions around you and you need to shift to those conditions. And that's okay if you feel that your productivity is getting lower at some point, but you shouldn't be worried about it. You just need to adapt it to it. And the last thing that I think is really important to note, don't stay up long. It's better to get up early, something that I mentioned just in the beginning, than to stay up long. Why? Well, there are two reasons. One reason is that it's really to blur the distinction between work and life and get the balance disturbed. And that's something that you don't want to do because you will get burned out really quickly. And the other thing is just not healthy. Okay, then some Zoom tips. one thing that well, if it's a regular call with your team, let's say a daily call, don't turn off the video unless you have really crappy internet and you just get the video shuttering, because this is the way we communicate, right? We use facial cues, visual cues when communicating, so video is really important. If you want to drive a discussion, there is this members list in Zoom. I'm gonna share it with you. So if you go, you should be able to see it right now. If you go to more, then there is.
We can see it.
You can see
Participants. Okay, let's try again.
Mark, I think like it is only for you. It is not available for other people.
Oh, okay. So anyway, if you're on a Zoom call, then there is in the top bar, there are some icons. Yeah, that's a good idea. You should be able to see it now, right?
Yeah,
So
that worked.
Yeah, so there is this participants, and if you go to this participants menu, there is a raise hand option, like this here, raise hand, see? And you can use it for moderating the discussion. So whenever you want to drive a discussion during Zoom call, please ask people to use this raise hand and monitor the list so that you can see who's raising hand, and then you can ask people to do their take their part, right? And that's how I think it's really easy to drive the discussion through the Zoom call. Okay, and we're going to use it actually today for Q&A. Okay, so that's it. Let me close this one. Next. The other thing, if you connect to a Zoom call, to a regular Zoom call, you're not presenting, you're just going to have a discussion or a daily stand-up or something like that. It's really nice to have this option set in Zoom options. So you go to options, audio, and then you tick this press and hold space key to temporarily unmute yourself. So when you join the Zoom call, you're muted by default. But then when you start talking, you can press the space and then this will unmute yourself. This helps with unnecessary noises and things like that entering the call. So you use space to talk and then you just stop pressing it, and that's it. Okay, then the other thing, if you have two monitors, two displays, then I heartily recommend that you use dual monitors for the call, because when someone starts sharing the screen, you will get the shared screen on one monitor, and you will get the gallery of members on the second screen. This is really helpful to discuss things and to be able to still see members while someone is sharing the screen, right? So that's it. Some practical tips for everyday work from home with Zoom. And then common issues that I've recognized when working from home. One thing is that, and this is the most reported issue when people work remotely, that they start feeling lonely. And this is natural because you lacked all the social interactions that you get in the office. You need to find a replacement for water cooler conversations. And something that we came up with in Highlander's team is a once a week call for half an hour. That is a coffee table. So we grab a cup of coffee or tea or whatever you want to drink and just discuss all the things, work-related, non-work-related, just to have this kind of social interaction that is a replacement for water cooler conversations that you get in the office. And I think that worked very well for us. Then lack of work-life balance, that is something that can happen both ways. So you can get work intrude your life, or you can get life intrude your work. This is, well, this happens. And the only thing that I can come up with is that, first of all, you need to make clear marks. And one thing that helped to get those clear marks is starting and ending your workday with a ritual that marks the limits. Like, for example, walking around the block or the quarter, right? So you get up early in the morning, you get out of your flat or your apartment or home, just walk for 5 minutes, get back, and then you know that you started work. And when you're done with that, when you're done with your work for the day, you do the same thing, so that you're like coming back home. This is really helpful. Feeling of lower productivity, that might happen as well, and it's expected in the beginning actually, and it's fine. You just need to adjust to new setting, and probably in few days you will get used to it. So don't worry about it. It's not worth your time unless it's prolonged. Then I think the best thing that you can do is talk to your manager about that. And a couple of tips here, what can help with that. Schedule a maker's time in your calendar. So this is a block, long blocks of 2 hours, 4 hours in your calendar when you won't accept any meetings. This is the time for you so that you can focus on your work and do the deep work during that time. The other thing, start early, because you won't get bothered at, before, let's say, 9 a.m. Most people start their day at 9 a.m. So if you start at 4 a.m. or 5 a.m., you've already 4 hours ahead, right? And then the other thing is, that's something that I can recommend very heartily, be ruthless in declining meetings. And I mean, if it's not crucial for you to attend that meeting, just don't attend that meeting. Okay. If you have issues with getting focused, that's something that I've learned. You might find some kind of a trigger that lets you enter the flow state. And for me, that's the music. So I've got a particular playlist that really helps me enter the flow state. And that's how I get focused every day. In your case, that might be something different, but you need to find it. And then some of us will stay with kids at home, and your kids might interrupt you during the work. My personal experience is that it really helps to explain to kids that you're actually working and you need to not be bothered at that time. And then I've seen GitLab people came up with very clever solutions. So one of the solutions is preparing those 2 marks. X means no entry allowed, and O means you can interrupt daddy or mommy at work. Let the kids prepare those marks and use them, for example, hanging on the knob, on the doorknob, so that kids know that whether they can interrupt you or not when you're working. When you're on a call, that's obvious that you don't want them to interrupt you. But when you're just, I don't know, answering emails or something that is really not deep work, then you can put O on the doorknob. And since they're getting involved into that, they will understand that this will help them understand the situation. Okay, questions and answers. So that's